Imagine owning an airport, not just flying through one, but actually owning the entire place. Every single day, massive airplanes land on your runways while others take off carrying hundreds of passengers to destinations all over the world. Tens of thousands of travelers walk through your terminals with luggage in hand, and from the outside, it looks like money is constantly flowing through your business. It feels like the center of global travel, a place that's always busy, always moving, and always making money. After all, airports never seem to stop. Whether it's morning, afternoon, or the middle of the night, there's always another flight arriving, another flight departing, and another crowd of passengers filling the terminal. And honestly, it seems like one of the best businesses you could possibly own. Every airline needs your runways, every passenger has to pass through your building, planes are landing every few minutes, gates are constantly occupied, and millions of people visit every year. If you looked at the airport from above, you'd probably assume every takeoff and every landing adds another pile of cash to your bank account. The bigger the airport, the more flights it handles. And the more flights it handles, the richer the owner must become. At least that's how most people imagine the business works. But there's one problem with that picture. Airplanes don't actually spend very much time at airports. They land, unload passengers, refuel, board new travelers, and leave again as quickly as possible. In fact, airlines want to minimize every extra minute their aircraft spend sitting on the ground because every delay costs them money. So if planes are constantly trying to leave, how can airports become some of the most valuable pieces of infrastructure in the world? The answer has surprisingly little to do with the airplanes themselves. Because while everyone is watching the runway, the real business is happening inside the terminal. Most people assume airlines are the airport's biggest customers. And while airlines certainly pay to use the runways, gates, and terminals, they're only one piece of a much larger picture. Think about it this way. An airplane might stay at the gate for less than an hour before taking off again. But every passenger on board begins their journey long before the plane ever leaves the ground. They arrive at the airport carrying luggage, checking in, passing through security, and waiting patiently for their flight. During that entire time, the airport isn't simply moving people from one place to another. It's hosting thousands of potential customers, all gathered in one place. Unlike almost any other business, airports have something incredibly valuable. A captive audience. Once passengers pass through airport security, leaving isn't really an option anymore. Most people still have an hour, sometimes two, before boarding begins. They can't simply drive somewhere else for lunch. They can't wander into another shopping center across town. For a little while, the airport becomes their entire world. And that's exactly what makes every traveler so valuable. They're not just waiting for a flight. They're spending time inside a place designed to serve almost every need they might have before they board. In fact, airports quietly encourage passengers to arrive early. Airlines recommend getting there hours before departure, especially for international flights. That extra time helps reduce delays and keeps flights running on schedule. But it also creates something far more valuable for the airport: time. Every additional minute a traveler spends inside the terminal becomes another opportunity to buy a coffee, browse a bookstore, eat at a restaurant, visit a duty-free shop, or simply notice another advertisement along the way. The airplane may be waiting at the gate, but the passenger is already participating in the airport's real business. For most people, waiting at the airport feels like wasted time. You check your bags, pass through security, find your gate, and then you wait. Sometimes for 30 minutes, sometimes for 2 or even 3 hours. It can feel frustrating, almost like time is standing still. But from the airport's perspective, those hours are incredibly valuable. Every passenger sitting at the gate represents an opportunity. They have nowhere else to be, very few places to go, and plenty of time before boarding begins. What feels like downtime for the traveler is actually one of the airport's most valuable resources, because every minute spent inside the terminal can become another opportunity to generate revenue. That's why airports aren't designed as empty waiting rooms. Instead, they're filled with things to do. Coffee shops line the walkways. Restaurants sit near the busiest gates. Bookstores, souvenir shops, electronics stores, pharmacies, and duty-free boutiques all compete for your attention as you make your way through the terminal. None of these businesses are there by accident. They're there because airports understand something incredibly simple. The longer passengers wait, the more likely they are to spend money. And when millions of travelers pass through every year, even small purchases begin adding up to enormous amounts of revenue. In many ways, an airport works more like a shopping mall than people realize. The airplanes bring customers to the building, but once passengers are inside, the airport shifts its attention to something entirely different. Keeping travelers comfortable, keeping them entertained, and most importantly, giving them reasons to spend. That cup of coffee before an early flight, a last-minute gift from the duty-free shop, lunch before boarding, a magazine for the journey. Each purchase might seem insignificant on its own, but multiplied across millions of passengers every year, they become one of the airport's biggest sources of income. The flight may be the reason people came, but waiting is where the business begins. If you ask someone how airports make money, they'd probably give you a simple answer. The airlines pay them. And that's true, but only partly. Airlines do pay airports to use the runways, park at the gates, and operate flights. Those fees are an important source of income, but for many airports, they're only one piece of a much larger business. Once passengers step inside the terminal, a completely different engine of revenue starts running. Every restaurant pays rent, every coffee shop leases its space, every retail store contributes to the airport's income. Instead of relying on a single customer, airports earn money from hundreds of businesses operating under one roof. The runway brings the passengers in, the terminal turns them into customers. One of the biggest businesses inside an airport isn't flying at all, it's shopping. Walk through almost any international airport and you'll pass rows of luxury boutiques, electronics stores, perfume counters, jewelry shops, bookstores, souvenir stands, and duty-free stores. These aren't there simply to make the terminal look nice. They're there because airports know exactly who their customers are. People who have time, people who are already traveling, and people who are often willing to spend a little extra before boarding their flight. A single purchase might only be $20. Another might be $1,000. Across millions of travelers every year, those small decisions become billions in retail sales. And the opportunities don't stop once passengers leave the terminal. Think about everything that happens before and after a flight. Parking garages, car rental companies, airport hotels, taxi services, rideshare pickup zones, advertising screens, currency exchange counters. Even the giant digital billboards lining the walkways generate revenue. By the time a passenger finally boards their plane, they may have spent money with half a dozen different businesses connected to the airport. That's why modern airports aren't simply transportation hubs. They're massive commercial ecosystems designed to earn revenue from nearly every step of the travel experience. Here's something most travelers never think about. Before you even enter the terminal, you've probably already become a customer. Maybe you parked your car in the airport garage. Maybe you paid for long-term parking because you'll be away for a week. Or perhaps you rented a car the moment you landed. None of those services have anything to do with flying an airplane. Yet they're some of the first ways an airport begins making money from every trip. For many airports, parking alone generates hundreds of millions of dollars every year. In fact, it's often one of the most profitable parts of the entire business. Every parking space represents a small piece of real estate earning money almost every single day. Airports also own an incredible amount of land, far more than most people realize. Besides the runways and terminals, many airports control thousands of acres surrounding their property. Some of that land is used for hotels, office buildings, cargo warehouses, aircraft maintenance facilities, fuel storage, and logistics centers. And just like a shopping mall leases space to stores, airports lease land and buildings to dozens of different companies, airlines, delivery companies, rental car businesses, hotels, restaurants. Every lease creates another steady stream of income, whether a single passenger buys anything or not. In many ways, an airport isn't just operating flights. It's managing an enormous real estate portfolio. And once you see airports this way, they start looking very different. They're not simply places where airplanes land. They're giant commercial districts built around transportation. The airplanes bring people, the passengers support the shops. The shops pay rent, the parking lots earn money all day, the hotels welcome overnight travelers, the warehouses serve global shipping companies. Everything is connected. Flying may be the reason the airport exists. But the business stretches far beyond the runway. By the time a plane takes off, dozens of different companies have already benefited from that single journey. Have you ever noticed that airports rarely feel like ordinary buildings? The moment you step inside, everything seems carefully organized. Wide walkways guide you naturally from one area to the next. Bright digital signs point toward your gate. Large windows let in natural light, making the terminal feel open instead of crowded. Even when thousands of people are moving through the building at once, the experience often feels surprisingly smooth. None of that happens by accident. Modern airports are designed to move enormous numbers of people efficiently while encouraging them to explore the terminal along the way. Every hallway, every escalator, and every waiting area is planned with both convenience and business in mind. Take a closer look at where the shops are located. They're almost never hidden in quiet corners. Instead, you'll usually find them along the busiest walking routes, right between security and the departure gates. That's because nearly every passenger has to pass through those areas. Whether you're looking for a coffee or not, you'll walk past cafes. Whether you plan to shop or not, you'll pass duty-free stores, bookstores, electronic shops, and restaurants before reaching your gate. The airport isn't forcing anyone to buy something. It's simply making sure every traveler sees as many opportunities as possible. The more people who walk past a store, the greater the chance that someone decides to step inside. Airports also understand something incredibly simple about human behavior. When people are relaxed, they tend to spend more. That's one reason modern terminals include comfortable seating, charging stations, quiet lounges, children's play areas, public art, and even indoor gardens in some airports around the world. These features aren't just there to improve the travel experience. They encourage passengers to stay comfortable while they wait instead of rushing straight to the gate. The longer travelers remain relaxed inside the terminal, the more likely they are to grab a meal, browse a few shops, or make one last purchase before boarding. Comfort isn't just good customer service. For an airport, it's also good business. At the beginning of this video, owning an airport probably sounded like one of the greatest transportation businesses in the world. A place where airplanes land every few minutes, airlines pay to use your runways, and millions of passengers pass through your terminals every year. But after looking behind the scenes, it's clear that airports are doing something much more interesting. The airplanes may be the reason people arrive, but they're not the reason airports become profitable. The real business begins the moment passengers walk through the terminal doors. Every coffee they buy, every meal they eat, every souvenir they pick up, every hour they spend waiting. That's where the airport quietly transforms travel into business, and once you recognize that business model, you start seeing it everywhere. Theme parks don't simply sell rides. Shopping malls don't simply rent stores. Casinos don't simply offer games. Even stadiums earn money from far more than the event itself. They're all built around the same simple idea: bring people together, keep them there, create opportunities to spend. Airports follow exactly the same playbook. The flight, is the attraction. The terminal is where the business happens. Waiting isn't a problem to solve. It's one of the airport's most valuable assets. So, if someone asked whether owning an airport is a good business, the answer isn't simply yes or no. You're not buying a few runways, you're not buying a control tower, and you're certainly not buying the airplanes. You're buying an incredibly complex business that combines transportation, hospitality, retail, real estate, logistics, and psychology into one enormous ecosystem. The airplanes may be the most visible part of the airport, but they were never the product. They're simply what brings millions of customers through the front door. Because in the end, the most valuable thing an airport doesn't own is the airplane. It's the passenger, and that's the business you were really buying all along.